TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. Separate acts of terror claimed the life of one IDF soldier and wounds another 7 troops, as well as an Israeli civilian. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant expresses his deep appreciation for Washington's support of Jerusalem's right to defend itself against terrorism. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian pledges, while visiting Damascus, that the Islamic Republic would ultimately respond to Israel's alleged strikes in Syria. The latest exchange of threats between Jerusalem and the leaderships of the Islamist Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Hezbollah has evidently not deterred either side. To the contrary, repeated acts of Palestinian terror over the past 24 hours has bolstered the position of Israeli leaders pushing for the resumption of targeted killings of Islamist leaders directing attacks against Israeli civilians and troops. Last night, at approximately 9 p.m., a 14-year-old resident of the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Beit Hanina arrived at Jerusalem city center armed with a knife with the intention of perpetrating a nationalistically motivated terror attack. According to the police investigation, the Palestinian teenager drew his knife adjacent to the TV7Israel light rail stop and stabbed a 25-year-old Israeli citizen, wounding him moderately. A number of unarmed bystanders immediately sought to keep the terrorist at bay, while women and children promptly retreated from the scene. Thankfully, an off-duty border police officer witnessed the attack while traveling on a light rail train that approached the scene.
During a ride on the light rail toward the central station, I identified people screaming outside while fleeing the area. While looking around to assess the situation, I identified the terrorist holding a knife rushing toward people. The light rail was in motion, so I instructed it to stop and immediately disembarked while preparing my personal weapon. I arrived to the terrorists while a few civilians tried to fight him. I immediately released a few bullets in the terrorist's direction and neutralized him. Immediately thereafter, I distanced the crowd from the terrorist and dealt with the incident further.
Following initial medical treatment at the scene, the wounded Israeli was admitted to a nearby hospital in moderate condition while the terrorist succumbed to his wounds. Meanwhile, overnight, during operational activity to secure entry of Jewish worshippers to Joseph's tomb east of Nablus city, an IDF officer and 3 soldiers sustained separate degrees of injuries when an improvised explosive device, or IED, detonated next to their armored vehicle. The officer and 2 of the soldiers sustained light injuries, while a 3rd soldier was hospitalized in moderate condition. It is important to explain that the IED had been planted on one of the roads used for security and not on the access road to the tomb's compound. The troops were initially attacked with light weapons and improvised explosive devices that were thrown at them. After disembarking their armored vehicle with the intention of returning fire, the powerful IED was detonated remotely, while in tandem Palestinian militants opened heavy fire toward the wounded Israeli troops. Additional Israeli forces promptly arrived at the scene, and after roughly an hour of reported clashes, the Red Crescent reported that 39 Palestinians were wounded. In contrast, no additional injuries were reported among the Israeli troops. It is worth noting that the Iranian proxy Palestinian Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for the IED's detonation. Separately overnight, IDF, ISA, and Border Police Special Operations Forces conducted extensive counter-terror activities throughout the West Bank districts of Judea and Samaria, during the course of which a total of 17 suspected terror operatives were successfully apprehended. Moreover, during the course of the operational activities, extensive weaponry, including a weapons manufacturing facility, were located and confiscated. Meanwhile, this morning, yet another act of terror was reported near the city of Modi'in when a Palestinian truck driver rammed his vehicle into a group of IDF soldiers.
בוקר קשה כאן בזירה.
A difficult morning, here at the scene of the attack and in general. We are talking about a terrorist who drove a truck that arrived from the east, westward. On his path, near the Maccabim border crossing, the terrorist identified 3 soldiers who were most likely not operational, accelerates towards them and rams his truck into the 3 soldiers. All 3 troops sustained injuries and were subsequently transferred to hospital. The terrorist continued driving toward the Naalan border crossing. At Shirlat Junction, he takes a right turn and persists toward Naalan Junction, where security guards identified the terrorist driving his truck and fire at him. The terrorist was neutralized and is currently wounded in critical condition. The terrorist was also evaluated to hospital for medical treatment.
Deputy Commissioner Avi Biton continued by highlighting that the Palestinian terrorist's identity was known since he had a valid permit to work in Israel.
As we currently understand and know, the terrorist is known to us. He is 41 years old, a Palestinian resident of the West Bank territories, who possessed a work permit to work in Israel.
It is important to clarify that one IDF soldier was regrettably killed in the heinous ramming attack, while 3 additional troops who were evacuated to a hospital for further medical treatment were diagnosed in separate degrees of injury, including 1 in critical condition. Meanwhile, Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who also holds a ministerial portfolio in the Defense Ministry, arrived at the scene of the attack and pledged that Israel will fight terrorism with all of its might.
The important message is that we will fight terrorism in its supportive and orchestrating surroundings with full might.
In contrast to Israel's pledge to ratchet up its war on terror even further, the Islamist Hamas organization praised the separate attacks against Israelis over the past 24 hours as heroic operations, yet stopped short from claiming responsibility for any of the attacks. Turning to New York City, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, during his ongoing visit to the United States, conducted meetings with U.S. government officials, including White House Coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa, Brett McGurk, Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs Barbara Leaf, and U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield. During his meeting with White House Coordinator McGurk, Minister Gallant raised the importance of expanding the Abraham Accords to include additional partners in the region. He also emphasized the importance of security arrangements for this purpose. Moreover, Minister Gallant briefed the U.S. officials on Iranian actions that undermine stability throughout the Middle East region. In this regard, he emphasized Israel's commitment to defending its citizens against any threat and expressed his deep appreciation for Washington's support for Jerusalem's right to defend itself against terrorism and for the U.S. administration's commitment to Israel's security. Turning to Damascus, where Syrian Foreign Minister Faisal Miqdad hosted his Iranian counterpart Hossein Amir-Abdollahian to discuss joint efforts to contend with Israel and the United States, among other issues of common concern. At a time when the Islamic Republic of Iran is utilizing most of the tools at its disposal to entrench militarily in Syria, among others, including by transfer of sophisticated weaponry into the country via commercial flights, Tehran is evidently losing patience. Hundreds of Israeli strikes have not been met with an Iranian response, as Tehran clearly fears the consequences of Jerusalem's retribution. Nevertheless, following the latest aerial strike on Aleppo airport, the Iranian foreign minister once again voiced his country's pledge to respond to the bombardment, which Damascus attributed to the Israeli Air Force.
I strongly condemn the Israeli aggressions on Aleppo's airport and civil areas in Syria. I ensure that the Israeli criminal aggressions on the region's countries will not remain without response.
Alongside the echoed threats by Iran's top diplomat vis-à-vis Israel, Minister Amir-Abdollahian also seized the opportunity to boastfully advise the U.S. military and its leadership in Washington, D.C. to leave the greater Middle East, insisting that the strategic place deployment of American forces cannot thwart Iranian smuggling into Syria and elsewhere.
We advised the American soldiers to return from where they came, and we advised the American leaders to leave the reign alone. No one can cut the roads that connect the states of the region.
It is worth noting that the Iranian foreign minister's remarks came after Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh highlighted that the latest U.S. military deployments to the broader Middle East, including roughly 3,000 U.S. Marines, together with additional naval and aerial assets, will remain in the volatile region until the Islamic Republic alters its behavior. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to point out once more that TV7 Israel is a donation-based ministry, and therefore, if you're blessed by our productions and would like to help support keeping TV7 Israel on air, please consider making a financial donation. To do so, you can visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I would like to encourage you to pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, as well as for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Essen wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time.